Now, did anyone notice the... No, it's all right. Now, this is just to prove that we did not use AI to do this.
Would have more spelling mistakes.
I love it, and I'm not going to correct that. Which is why we're talking about the latest version of Ubuntu that's out there called 26.04. Very, very technical name, 26.04 for the year 2026 and 04. So LTS, first of all, just to introduce that. So introduce myself, I'm Dale Ware, I'm the Territory Manager for Canonical. That's how you say it. So Canonical. And it took me, when I applied for a role at Canonical, I had to look up who they were and what they did. So you're not alone. And it's all about Ubuntu, but there's a whole ecosystem that goes with that we're very proud of. We're based in the UK, which at the moment is actually really strategically important with all the geopolitical nonsense that's going on. We're getting an awful lot of opportunities because we're not from the US. And it's a really interesting time for open source. Who can tell me what LTS stands for? Long-term support. So what does that mean? It means when we do this, we will support this version for how long? I hear 5, I hear 15, 10, it's 15. We just changed it at the end of last year from 12 to 15. So 5 years, theoretically it's free. Now for commercial customers we actually ask you to pay support because it's really cheap. But the idea of Ubuntu is we're trying to see open source to the entire world. Our CEO, Mark Shuttleworth, wrote Ubuntu. He created it 22 or something years ago. And his mission is to make open source available to everyone in the world, regardless of who you are, where you are. He's from South Africa, so he went all around Africa. In fact, it's really hard to get IT to work in the back blocks of Africa. But he said, what I want is a commercial company, if they use our software, to pay support so that we can spread it around the world. That's actually the mission of Canonical. Really interesting, totally different to most of the corporates that I previously worked for. They don't think of it. So long-term support, 5 years standard support with 10 years for extended support, which just means that we will support it, but you need to pay support for it. And the last 5 years is legacy support. So that's when the support gets to be 1.5 times the price. And the reason we make it more expensive is to encourage you to look at upgrading over that 5-year period. Now I still have one customer that I won't name called Tate's that are running 14.04 in production, which I had great pleasure in ringing them up in October last year when we extended our long-term support and said, oh, guess what? You can pay support for another few years. You've got till 2029. And they said, don't tell my manager that. We're trying to get rid of that application. It's just one application they can't get off. It's quite fun. We've got a lot there. So anyway, that's all about what LTS is. So that's the logo for 26.04, the Resolute Raccoon. And the naming convention is always an animal and some word. And there's a whole competition that goes out within Canonical as to naming of those things. And it's a really interesting thing. And it's been going alphabetically. So it was the Questing Quokka, I think, was the last one. So that was a hard one to say, and let alone spell. But it looked like a wombat to me. But this is a raccoon, I can kind of understand that. And the next one, funnily enough, will be SS. So when that comes out, you know what it's? Stonking Stingray. There you go. That's going to be the next one. I'll talk about that. So 26.04 is aimed to be around for the next 15 years. And at the moment, what's the hottest topic you ever hear about every day? AI? Anyone heard of it? Yeah. So a lot of 26.04 is making sure everyone's enabled for AI, getting it ready, and you'll see some of the stuff, particularly the last point there, harmony with the silicon. We are working with the silicon vendors to enable AI, particularly NVIDIA. We're very much partnered with them, and I can talk a little bit about that. And it's all about resilience and freshness, so that's all a good marketing term. So if I start off at the server and platform end, They non-do desktop. And what I haven't got on a slide is we've also announced Ubuntu Core 26. So that is the IoT device version of Ubuntu, and it's a containerized version of 26.04. It's much, much smaller for smaller devices like Raspberry Pis, Qualcomm servers, a lot of telco type stuff, IoT, and it is the same Ubuntu inside. So we can use our same landscape to manage all these IoT devices as a service. But anyway, it's all about trying to be resilient and keep it maintained. These are the themes, if you like, for 26.04, and trying to lead the adoption industry-wide. For instance, we've got Linux 7 in there, and literally, Linux 7 was announced on April the 4th, and 26.04 came out on the 24th of the 4th. So Linux 7 was raw when we put it out. But our commitment, Mark Shuttleworth's commitment was, when we bring out a release, we will make the latest Linux available. So it was kind of risky, but we've gone there, and there's some really nice functionality in there because of that. We're trying to get a better default user experience, because a lot of people want a nicer user experience for most of the tools you use, and there are some potential performance improvements, and it's a classic it depends, because we've made some kernel updates. We've rewritten quite a bit of the kernel in Rust, and sometimes that can be up to 20% better performance on some functions, but not all, because we haven't done the entire thing yet. We're getting there. So, some of the tool chains that we use inside the box. If you don't understand these acronyms, neither do I. They're very specific to specific workloads, but all of the functions in Java, we've tried to get to the latest level, like OpenJDK 25, Kotlin 2, and Rust. We are really going full on with Rust as a coding platform. So replacing a whole lot of old C code with Rust, and it's far more extensible, and a lot of it is focused on memory protection, particularly in the kernel. So you'll see a lot more security things there. Cargo auditable for the tool chains as well. So lots of interesting things there. And Go, we've got the latest, almost the latest release of Go. And .NET. People don't really think of .NET when they think of open source, do they? But it runs very, very well on our platforms. We've been working with Microsoft for years on that, which is quite unknown. And we're doing a preview of Zig. Anyone using Zig? So just write down these names and have a look at them. They're actually quite interesting. The tool chains. This is the one I'm more familiar with, and like Linux 7 is in the kernel. So that's our starting point, and there's a whole lot of changes within Linux 7. We don't own Linux 7, that's upstream, but that's what we're based on. One of my exciting things is GPU enablement. If you're talking AI, you're typically talking GPUs to really take advantage of it. We have a very, very tight relationship with NVIDIA. Now, anyone know what the operating system is DGX based on? What are you here for?
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu, yes. DGX is actually Ubuntu with some kernel tweaks. And you'll find probably this year NVIDIA will rename it back to Ubuntu, because we have put most of the NVIDIA tool chains, the CUDA tools, the Docker, inside our repositories. So it ships standard with Ubuntu now. And also for AMD, the ROCm toolset, we include that. And in the Intel space, the OpenVINO. And don't forget RISC-V. Has anyone been following the RISC-V processors? It's kind of an open source version of the processor. It's the 5th generation of the RISC processors, which go right back to anyone who's ever heard of an R6000, IBM Power, things called RISC-based processors. RISC-V is more of an open source thing. In Asia, they are going off. Alibaba, for instance, the RISC-V processors are absolutely everywhere. You're going to find them going all around the world. Any vendor can actually make these chips in an open standard called RISC-V. And we've been doing a lot of work with these guys to enable it. And where it's interesting is it's like a mainframe processor. There's a whole lot of system on the chip. So they've got co-processors that do a whole lot of function. And in the AI space, and more so later on when the quantum type stuff comes in, that will become more and more important. So GPU enablement, NVIDIA is our #1 partner in that space, and we're doing a truckload of them. So you're finding a lot of the NVIDIA hardware that they come out defaults to Ubuntu on it's installed. That's what they are very close with us in that environment. So if you can get delivery of GPUs at the moment, Ubuntu's got a really good stack underneath that to enable all of that and enable the GPUs, the NPUs, etc. There's a whole lot of PUs that you don't even understand what they're for, but they're for different. There's data workloads, there's all sorts of workloads in there. And we're doing a dual track container and VM stack at the same time, because the world is slowly migrating to containers. It's not gone full hog. And most customers still have a majority of VMs at the moment, so virtual environments, and containers are slowly growing. We're doing a dual track so that we can keep up with all the changes that are going on. So that's at a high level. There's more detail obviously underneath that. Now desktop, anyone using Ubuntu desktop like I have on my laptop? So it's GNOME 50. So we've gone to the latest version of GNOME. We went off GNOME for a while and we came back to GNOME, but it's shown a whole lot of new apps. And the desktop is by far and away the nicest place to play with that. So I'm looking forward to using that. This is a corporate laptop, so I'm still on 2404. My home one has got 2604. And it looks different. And the whole user experience is a lot nicer. There's a lot more permissions thing, but where people get a lot more excited is TPM-backed full disk encryption. So it's using the processor to do a lot of the encryption on the desktop itself. Very good. That's on the desktop, it's not on the server completely yet, but it's in the desktop. And that's all available on Windows subsystem for Linux, WSL. So if you've got a Windows shop, a Microsoft shop, you can have a Windows subsystem for Linux and have Ubuntu running in there full. And this is Microsoft's way of acknowledging that Linux exists and trying to, I won't say control, but at least keep tabs of what's been going on under the desks of a lot of their users. Very, very nice function in WSL these days. And identity management. The world is a lot of cloud going in there, so there's been a lot of extras added for authenticating both locally and with a cloud provider. So for instance, Microsoft Entra ID, so that you can have a single sign-on for multiple hybrid cloud type models. And it supports OpenID Connect with a multi-factor authentication device. So if you've got hardware encryption or hardware authentication, it works really well with that now. Google, Microsoft, and AWS, and there's a few other things that should use a name, unlock, and a whole lot of other stuff for identity management, because funnily enough, security is very important at the moment. And at the server end, we're finding an awful lot of customers wanting our Ubuntu Pro subscription for the CIS type security. It's very, very easy on the subscription. We've got a tool that says what you need to do to be CIS IG2 certified, and then it's got a tick box to say, we want you to do it. And it'll do all the configuration changes for you to automate it. So really, really powerful. That's got nothing to do with 2604, that's just a function of that. So what's next? I think it's always important to say that we have a lot coming. 2604, funnily enough, is in April. We will have an interim results in 2610. So that's just more extensions to the desktop and the server, things that we couldn't quite get into 2604 will be there. So what you tend to find is an LTS will support for 15 years. People that want the latest and greatest of functions that may not necessarily be quite as stable all the time. You go on to the interim releases and you can keep going with that. So the developers often go on the interim releases to get the latest in the toolkits and the AI tools.
27.04 will come out in April next year, 2017, and the next LTS is 28.04. And I also mentioned Ubuntu Core 26 is now available. So again, the IoT devices is getting a lot of work at the moment, and we're finding we're loading more and more Ubuntu onto those devices, particularly with telcos. Cell phone towers, for instance, are like a little mini network, so we put micro cloud in there, and it can do VMs, it can do containers, and it can be updated by landscape centrally. So remote places, it's becoming really important. And we can't tell you all the details that are coming out in 26.10 or 27.04 yet, but there will be a lot of other stuff in there, and you'd have to sign non-disclosure agreements if we were going to talk about that. So